Start off with a little threshold talk, Tim. We talk about this every year when it comes to the draft, and it's a big conversation piece. Um, you get those guys out there on Twitter that are the threshold police. You could post, man, really like this guy. The Packers will never take him, right? You get that a lot. And it's all around. Listen, we got threshold markers on our draft board every year. We want you to know, hey, if it comes down to these two guys, the Packers are probably going to lean towards this one if they're in the same overall tier of talent, because they do press into the thresholds a little bit, but it doesn't mean they're going to go outside of it if the value is great enough for that specific pick. So what I did was put a little article together and comb through the internet, pulled from like 16 or 17 different websites to try to get some information using AI to see, all right, what did they do different this year, if anything, when it comes to the thresholds? Because it did seem like it was a little more free this year, a little more freedom, I guess you could say, that Goody used in terms of getting away from the threshold of touch. So let's just dive into it here, man. The Green Bay Packers have long adhered to a distinct scouting philosophy rooted in the Ron Wolf era, prioritizing athleticism and specific physical traits for each position. While this formula has guided their draft strategy for decades, the 2025 NFL Draft saw the Packers both honor their core principles and stretch their boundaries in notable ways. Here's a closer look at how their 8 selections aligned with or deviated from their established draft tendencies. All right. And he goes on to say a balancing act, athletic testing and expectation or exceptions. Sorry. The 2025 draft class presented a unique challenge. Many prospects opted out of some or all pre-draft athletic testing, a trend that could have forced Green Bay to rethink their reliance on measurable data. General Manager Brian Gutekunst emphasized pre-draft that incomplete testing complicates evaluations and often hurts the prospect's stock, which I totally agree with. But again, if a player wants to take that risk of their stock potentially falling because they're afraid something may happen during the testing process, may it be an injury or maybe you don't test as well, good on them. That's the risk and reward that comes with that, right? So true to his word, every Packers draftee participated in at least some testing, with none skipping the critical 40-yard dash. This suggests Green Bay's commitment to athletic benchmarks remains unwavering, even in a year when testing data was scarce. However, the Packers did make exceptions, selecting players with incomplete athletic profiles in 7 of their 8 picks. Let's dive into how these selections reflect both adherence to and departures from their draft principles. So key draft picks and their fit with the Packers philosophy. All right, let's start off with the first pick there, 23rd overall pick, first round, I should say, Matthew Golden. Golden represents one of the more significant deviations from Green Bay's first-round norms. His athletic testing was limited. He ran a 40-yard dash but skipped vertical, broad, and agility drills, making him the least tested first-round pick since 2001 at 5'11", 191 pounds. He's also the smallest boundary receiver drafted under Gutekunst, smaller even than Greg Jennings, who was 5'11", 197 from the Ted Thompson era. Despite this, Golden fits Green Bay's obsession with elite speed, boasting a top-tier relative athletic score, speed grade, a trait shared by 9 of Gutekunst's 10 first-rounders, Jordan Love being the outlier, obviously at quarterback, maybe not so much worried about it. His selection shows the Packers are willing to bend on size and testing, but not on game-changing speed. So as you can see here, the golden child. What do you think, Tim? I think one of the things that comes to mind for me when you talk about Matthew Golden and maybe getting away from a little bit of the norm in the athletic testing or the size in this specific situation here, being the smallest, even smaller than Greg Jennings that was taken during the Ted Thompson era, is they really, really liked his personality. They really liked his demeanor. Goody kind of talked about that. He just one of these guys that seems to ooze with confidence, but also have a certain level of work ethic, and then coming from a blue-collar background as well. Obviously, we talked about in his breakdown the other day some of the personal stuff he had to deal with growing up.
Yep.
What do you think, man?
I think that it really did go a long way when it came down to it throughout the scouting process. Confident, humble, and hardworking. I mean, it's a great combination right there. And, we got to remember, Matt Golden was the guy that, as soon as we announced the pick, he wanted access to the facility. Like, the guy was ready to leave the draft green room and go work out immediately. So, you can add hungry to that list too. You got a guy that is hungry to win, hungry to get better. and he fits the mold. So you're willing to make a little bit of a deviation off your normal thresholds when you fall in love with a player like that. It's not just Matt LaFleur said it himself. We don't want robots. We don't want robots in Green Bay. We want guys that have a passion, have emotion, have a desire to win. And I think that's why they ultimately took the shot with Matthew Golden there in the first round.
Yeah. H.E. Soder with the super chat. Thank you, buddy. He says team captain, top 30 visits, Senior Bowl or Shrine are still staples. Generally, RAS is still a thing. Shifting body types as the game is changing. The big thing that sticks out, man, they love those Senior Bowl guys. Every single year, it just seems like their draft class is littered with them. And the top 30 visits as well. Proved again, as we found out after the draft, Savion Williams was a top 30 visit. We talked about early, Micah Robinson was a top 30 visit. Matthew Golden was a top 30 visit. Anthony Belton was a top 30 visit. Who was the fourth rounder? Barron Sorrell. I don't think Barron Sorrell was the top 30, and I don't think Colin Oliver was. I could be wrong. I don't have the draft board pulled up, but yeah, I'm with you there, Soder. And again, man, with the game constantly changing, I think you find yourself in a position too where you go, okay, we feel like most of the pieces, if not all the pieces, are in place. Let's get a little bit aggressive here. Let's take a swing at a guy who's got this supposed blazing 40-yard dash. I can't wait till he hits a home run, Tim, so we can stop talking about, is he really that fast? Like, it's just, I don't know, man. When I turn on the tape, I see it. And I know many people that I respect a lot, they turn on the tape and they say they don't see it. But I'm literally watching him pull up to make catches because the ball is so underthrown. It's like, if he's having to slow down, he had his guy beat, right? So I think he'll be fine. Now, will he absolutely cut corners in the league early on? Probably not. He's going to have to adapt to the speed of the game and get a little bit more refined in his route running and all that to be able to create separation, even whether it's release off press man or it's just at that second level of the route where you can kind of create a little separation and then get that burst in the right time. And the thing I'm really happy about, though, with him is obviously tracking the ball. So appreciate you.
He won't have to slow down and deal with underthrown balls. He's got a better quarterback here in Green Bay for sure.
It might be the opposite. They maybe
might have to run a few of them down.
Yeah, Jordan might throw it out the stadium for sure. All right, up next, look at this guy right here. You kidding me? Big Anthony Belton, offensive tackle in the second round. Belton at 336 pounds, the heaviest offensive lineman Green Bay has drafted in the
Escalade
or Thompson eras, surpassing the previous high by 15 pounds. And again, this is something I ran into in the draft process last year when I was seeing offensive line. I go, man, really like him. People, oh, they'll never draft somebody that heavy. And here goes Anthony Belton in the second round, right? Basically a year and a half, 2 years later. Surpassing the previous high by 15 pounds. His 6'6" frame ties the tallest lineman in this era as well. You remember we were having that conversation in the draft process this year, Tim. There were people in the chat going, I think he's too tall. Goody likes him a little bit shorter than that. They kind of broke the norm there with this pick for sure. It says challenging the assumption that the Packers avoid oversized tackles due to concerns about leverage and versatility. Belton's combined weight was 336 pounds, but he's hinted at wanting to shed another 10 pounds to align with Green Bay's typical range in the low 320s. Interestingly, Gutekunst's interest in hefty linemen isn't new. Rumors suggest the Packers coveted 333-pound Darnell Wright in 2023. That was one of the people that we were talking about. If I remember correctly, Darnell Wright played for Tennessee, and I had a little bit of experience watching him play down here with all their games being on TV. Mm-hmm. And I remember people coming at me going, he's too heavy. But, it says Belton's athleticism and size suggest Green Bay values movement skills over strict weight limits as long as height doesn't exceed their threshold. What do you think about it? Man? Yeah, he is definitely thick. There's no doubt about that. What do you think, man?
I think that's a spot on right there because that must have been the intent, right? He's a little bit, big dog, right? You put him in an NFL facility, get him cut up, right? Get him on that pro workout plan. I'm sure he's going to cut a little bit of weight and be slightly leaner. But, hey, there's nothing wrong with big bodies on your line, right? You don't want a guy getting shoved around and pancaked all day. So I'm excited about this pick. Threshold be damn. This is a ball of clay, right? You can mold guys like this into the type of lineman that you want. So I personally like the pick. I like the deviation away from the typical thresholds.
Yeah, for sure. All right, up next, our boy Savion Williams, third rounder. Williams breaks the mold as the least productive pure receiver Green Bay has drafted in recent memory, with just 611 receiving yards in his best college season compared to Christian Watson's 801. So evidently before that, Christian Watson was the least productive that they had drafted. However, his versatility at TCU, Swiss Army knife, offsets this with 322 rushing yards and 12 total touchdowns, 6 receiving with 6 rushing in 2024. His 933 yards from scrimmage made him a palatable exception, showing the Packers value dynamic playmakers over traditional production metrics at skill positions. So obviously going a little bit away from the production that they typically like to see in college. And it's so cool, man. When Pac Daddy did his podcast about a week or two ago, he was talking about how there was multiple Chicago Bears, Detroit Lions, and Minnesota Vikings fans just talking about how they absolutely love Savion Williams. He's like, you watch. Now that the Packers took him, they'll be all on the hate train. Like, oh, yeah, this was a reach. This was a reach. And literally, Ryan's already got the receipts lined up. He already played the audios on the show of them just raving over him. So obviously Savion, the outlier here, Tim, is they kind of went away from production a little bit, man. Just probably seeing what he can do on the field,
Absolutely. And you remember Goody's comments; they had no intention on taking a receiver, in the third round. That was not in the game plan, but that's how the board fell, and clearly they were in love with him. And I think he's going to prove to be a deadly weapon in this Matt LaFleur offense. It's not about how are we going to use him; it's what is he not going to do in this offense. I think it's going to be a little bit of everything. But so there had to be something there. It's just, obviously his tape from TCU is just, if you want to have a really great evening, go watch some of his highlights and look at the type of player he is. Explosive might be an understatement, so makes perfect sense for them to go ahead and break the mold here and take a guy like him.
Yeah, and as H.E. Solder says in the chat, Williams got a C on that jersey. Yeah, and that's the other thing, too, is like in free agency, both the big free agent signings last year, not this year, but last year, Xavier McKinney, team captain, Josh Jacobs, team captain. It's obvious that Goody really, really does covet that. Another thing that we have on our PTA big board every year next to all the captain players on the team for sure. Daryl in the chat, Savion Williams is going to be awesome on offense. I hope so. I really do, man. I think he's got a lot of potential. He's got all the tools you need to work with. A little bit higher drop rate, but when you see those contested catches and that contested catch rate, it makes me sleep a little bit easier on that. Like, he's got it in him.
Yeah,
they just got to now get him on that jugs machine and get the normal catches down, get that refined. I think he'll be just fine.
Just like Matthew Golden's tape though at Texas. I mean, we saw some underthrown, overthrown behind him passes too that Savion was having to deal with too. So, the drop rate can be it can be a double-edged sword. Sometimes it's on your wideout, and sometimes it's on your quarterback for just throwing a bad ball. So it'll be fun to watch him develop though at the pro level.
Yeah, Coach Lynn in the chat says Williams going to take some of the hits off Reed. That's a great point, Coach.
Yep.
If to give Reed a little breather and allow Savion to get in there and run with physicality. Think about it. You face Jaden Reed, who I imagine is somewhere around 5'10" or 5'11", 190 some pounds. I would think is about his size. I don't know what he's playing at right now. You get used to him on a couple of jet sweeps, and all of a sudden you see a damn near 6'4", 230-pound wide receiver getting the rock. Those corners going to think a lot more about trying to hit him coming off the edge there.
Or mixing a couple of them rub routes with Savion and Reed. Oh, let them figure out what the hell they're supposed to do when that happens. Love it.
No doubt about it. We got Emilio joining us now. Emilio, just to get you caught up, we're hitting on a little threshold. Some of the things that Goody had kind of deviated from. And the first one you'll see here is obviously edge defender Barryn Sorrell. I want to say this about Barryn Sorrell. We got the chalk talk ready. Probably won't get to it tonight. We're trying to hold it until we got a dead time, right? And we'll rifle through all those. You know what part of me is thinking, guys? I'm thinking they may like to try to work. They're going to play both of them on the edge. Don't get me wrong. They like their big edges. But I'm kind of looking at Barryn Sorrell's tape and going, what if they kick him into 3-tech a little bit? Or they beef up LVN a little bit, put him at 3-tech a little bit more, and have Barryn Sorrell kind of take his place on the outside a little bit more. You know what I mean? Like mix and match in that regard. But this is one of my favorite prospects this year. When we do the chalk talk, you guys are going to go, holy cow, this dude can play some damn football. So here's what we said about kind of what they deviated away from here with Barron Sorrell, obviously in the 4th round. Sorrell's 32.5-inch arms are shorter than any edge rusher Gutekunst has drafted, though they're longer than Clay Matthews's from the Thompson era. This pick suggests Green Bay is willing to compromise on arm length for other redeeming qualities, such as Sorrell's pass rush upside. Emilio, we kind of led the whole thing off here with how anytime you post a prospect you like on Twitter, you got the threshold police come flying in and tell you why you're stupid, that they'll never take them, right? And I'm telling you, Goody is good. I had a tweet typed up when we got back into town from Green Bay from the draft. It was on a Tuesday. I'll never forget. On a Tuesday, I had a tweet typed up that said, "Someone check on the threshold police. They're not well today." And I went, Clayton, and I thought of what Peter Schrager says, like with his advice breaking into the sports media business was work hard and don't be an asshole. And I'm like, you're being an asshole, Clayton. Let's don't send that tweet out. So I deleted it. But what do you think about this, man? 32.5-inch arms. We heard it a lot during draft season. The arms aren't long enough, right?
Yeah, and that's exactly it. We talked about, I forgot the tackle, but, just because he had 5/8 instead of a full inch on his arms, he was under the the limit, and then you're not going to take him in the first round. Maybe he's a second rounder. It's like, all right, are we really going to talk about just, a quarter inch difference? I mean, that it'll buff. I mean, a quarter inch, that'll buff. You can bend two pieces of wood together and make quarter inch fit. So I'm totally fine with it. And Goody even said it. Like, I know you were going over, the first couple picks, but with Golden, hey, he might be a little bit on the smaller threshold size, but he's got one elite trait in its speed, and that's where we can base that off of. And I do like that they aren't completely stuck to it, and you got to be able to branch off. You can't be just stuck in your ways. You can't be stuck in a rut and say, I'm only going to take people over 6 foot. You're never going to find that talent. Those are those hidden gems, those athletes, Clay. You got to get, you get them scouted up, get the full scouting report, and it's over. I mean, and that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, and then you can cherry pick your top 3 or 4 attributes, right?
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, I'm going to take him. I'm going to put him at quarterback. He's going to be my safety, and then I got a running back, and we're good.
Sharing all the secrets over here, man. I hope you're not running online dynasty anymore.
No.
We're learning right now. So Coach Lynn says, does Sorrell hold enough weight to play 3 tech? Not ideally, Coach, right? But just when you look at his college tape, and I don't know, man, to me, it kind of feels like he's one of those guys that if they put an extra 10 pounds on him, you could probably roll him out there to 3 tech in those pass rushing situations. Now, again, he's got to do it, right? Tim, he's got to go out there at the NFL level. It's going to be way different than college. However, he did play against top-end competition at Texas, and we know that his defense was loaded. And I love what Goody did, man, taking a couple swings here and there, right? It's like, it's kind of like with Georgia's defensive line. We got Warren Brinson. You end up with Nazir Stackhouse. I'm trying to think of who the other guy was. Didn't we get another Georgia guy too? Maybe we didn't this year. Anyway, Goody's probably going, one of these guys are going to be a hit. Let's just get them all, right? Get them all in there, Tim.
Absolutely. I'm just looking at some early draft write-ups here on Barron Sorrell. Talked about him being versatile, anywhere from a 4-eye to a wide 7.
Yep.
Okay. And then, solid play strength provides a strong foundation as a rotational role in a multi-front NFL defense. What did we talk about last night with Coach Covington on this D-line? We talked about being able to revert to a 34 look if we need to situationally. And this guy right here, Mr. Sorrell, I think is going to be one of those pieces that you're going to see utilized in a wide variety of ways. Kind of talking about 3 tech though, or kicking inside. I think I'd rather see LVN go there initially in that role and keep Sorrell on the edge, but we'll see, man. Let this staff have fun at camp and figure out how they're going to utilize these guys and see how he transitions to the NFL level. But it is very interesting when you look at it. I think, again, this is why they were willing to just kind of step aside the typical threshold markers and go ahead and just get an absolute dog of a football player and put him out here with this staff. So I think it's great.
Yeah. And I love, too, that, obviously the 32.5-inch arm shorter than any edge rusher Gutekunst has drafted. But don't forget Mr. Clay Matthews, So,
and we're going to talk about it, but Colin Oliver, it's like we got a bend dude, and we've been going after LVN type, Enigbari type stand up, set the edge, being at 260, 270. But again, we're still wanting a lot from LVN. Where are his reps going to go? As he's kind of, after Preston got traded, didn't you think that LVN was going to get more reps? It didn't really happen.
right.
So, that's you got to fill the spot at some point. Someone's going to have to be on the field.
Yeah, and depending on how camp goes and OTAs and everything, I don't expect Barron Sorrell to go out there and get a ton of snaps. I'm
Right.
thinking, 10 to 15, maybe something like that,
Mm-hmm.
depending on injuries and depending on how the game's going. But in terms of like what you talked about, Tim, how Coach Covington has that experience with the multi-front, yes, we know that because we know how New England played defense for so long under Bill Belichick, right? And even Gerard Mayo for the year he was there. But also, it's exactly what Jeff Hafley said last night, right? When we listened to his presser yesterday, that's exactly what he was talking about. It was like, yeah, he brings that experience, and we're definitely open to ideas. Now, people were going, Hope, you're saying we're going back to a 3-4? No, nobody's saying that. But let me explain something to you. If you play a 4-3 under, right, and you put a 5-man front out there, guess what that is?
Mm-hmm.
That's essentially the same thing as our 34 jam. You're just going to have an elephant end as opposed to a 34 outside linebacker. So you've kind of got that same 5-man front. It turns into a 34 jam.
Being multiple is huge. It's like taking away the nasty splits from Matt LaFleur. Like, are we really going to talk about that? No. I mean, he's going to always have that. It would be like, you ever watch, UT play, you get extra wide splits. You got the wide receivers standing on the outside, hash lines. You're using all 53 yards of the field. But on defense, we just don't see that much difference. Obviously, it's like a, 4-3-3-4 or, a 4-2-5 or a 2-4-5, basically in the NFL. That's pretty much what you're looking at. But you have in college, you got a 3-2-6, a 3-3-5, wide, tight, all those, 3 high. So there's a bunch of different options. I would like us to be flexible if we could. I think Ryan was always talking about Wisconsin, where they had all those same size edge rushers, linebackers. You can sim it a lot easier when you're coming in on those blitzes. But shoot, even if they're 260 and we're able to flip flop them once in a while, you lose track of the guys. That's perfect.
Yeah. H.E. Soder says the addition of Oliver really makes you think they're looking at hitting some 3-4 scan. I mean, it could be possible. And here's what I see with Oliver. It kind of feels like the first year install is already taking place for Jeff Hafley. And now you step back and go, maybe we throw a little Leo or Viper, whatever you want to call it, right? I'll tell you this, you go back and watch the tape last year, they had Rashawn Gary playing Joker, standing up over the center a couple times, right? So they started to implement a lot of different things. And on that specific play, they had him scrape. So he's kind of playing linebacker on that particular play, even though he's just kind of standing up 1 yard off the ball, somewhere between a 1 and a 0 tech. And then they had Kenny crash over into the center and try to loop Gary or scrape him off of, I think it was Kenny Clark's, hip pocket there. So, all right, moving on to the 5th round pick, and that's our boy edge/linebacker Colin Oliver. When we get to his chalk talk, going to be an absolute blast, boys. I'm telling you, he is so much fun to watch. You're talking about a guy who can drop into coverage and rush the quarterback. Now, listen, he plays with speed. However, there is some power on tape too. I think speed is his superpower. This is a guy that's kind of cut from that cloth of someone you want to play Viper, you want to play Leo, that type of guy. Someone else you want to do that's probably Edgerrin Cooper and or Quay Walker. They got a little bit of pass rushing ability, and they've got the athleticism to drop into coverage, right? But here we go with Oliver at 6'1" 2/3 of an inch, and 240 pounds. You guys remember? Say this real quick. You remember when we were talking about our boy James Pierce Jr.?
Yep.
And the Threshold Police came out and were like, "There's no way they'll draft an edge defender at 240." Here we go, right? Here he is. So is a major outlier if viewed as an edge rusher, down 10 pounds lighter and an inch shorter than any Gutekunst drafted edge. However, his frame aligns with linebacker prototypes, suggesting Green Bay sees him as a hybrid who can play off ball or rush the passer. His flexibility likely justified the pick, showing the Packers' willingness to take chances on multi-role defenders. I'm going to tell you something else that will probably pop with him. I could see him being a huge special teams contributor. He just kind of got that motor. So, again, I think it's going to be one of those guys that if you're inside linebacker room, Tim, if they get a little banged up, right, and you're down a body or two,
Oh yeah,
you could throw him back there at stack backer. If your edge room gets a little bit light in the loafers because of some injuries, guess what you can do? Throw him in at edge, right? I think there's a lot of value with that.
I agree 100%. And I think the versatility factor is what made him so enticing to us. Sometimes that can hurt a prospect, right? You're kind of a tweener and they don't know where you're going to play, but I think it's where isn't he going to play? I think it's a great point. And, undersized was the big knock on him in the scouting reports. And again, so you see the Packers again, they're not sticking to the threshold indicator here. They're going for top tier talent and they're going for what they think is going to work in this Hafley system. And I agree, whether he's coming off the edge or he's playing, Mike or Will, he's going to help our football team for sure. And yeah, special teams is going to be his way to play his way onto the field. Let's be honest. That's how it's always been, if you can go out there and, knock somebody's block off on a return, that's going to go well for the staff. They're going to give you another opportunity. So it'll be fun to watch him develop.
Definitely. And Greg Rice says, I say Goot traditionally likes his edges, O-line, D-line like this. I'm glad he deviated for football players. And it's like when you turn on the tape, you can kind of see when a player's like, man, the game looks natural to him. And then you'll get a physical freak where it's like, kind of like LVN. LVN has all the tools physically. God built him to be a dominant edge rusher, Emilio, right? Absolutely. But he's got to go out there and kind of put it together. And I love what I think it was Coach Lynn said, LVN plays better in a 4-eye, in my opinion. That's what we talked about, right? We talked about that coming out in that draft. And if you guys were listening to the pod at the time, one of the things that I said was like, I remember this specifically, I heard going into the summer after the draft, Greg Cosell said, I'm hearing out of Green Bay that they see LVN, Lucas Van Ness, as strictly an edge defender. He said, that kind of surprises me because what he did well at Iowa was playing inside, somewhere between a 4-eye, not necessarily a 3, but a 4-eye to a 5 tech as opposed to a 7. But again, Emilio, these guys, you got to find out what their limitations are, right? You got to get them out there and test them. So.
Yeah, I mean it's like you're gonna have pepperoni pizza the rest of your life. I mean, I gotta see what a cheese is. I gotta see what just maybe a pepperoni and sausage is like. Dude, 6'1", 2.5, 2/3. That's completely a normal body size. It's kind of like when we were talking about Mikel Williams, that Georgia edge rusher. Like we didn't want him in the first because of the body size, right? He was a little bit smaller of an edge rusher. We didn't want to really mess with that. But in the 5th, 6th round, why not give it a shot? I mean, it's how well did Clay work out for us? If we could get another one, kind of like that. I miss the bend. Maybe Hafley said, hey, okay, maybe we need to get a little bit more edge pressure and push that pile forward so that our D-line can make a little hay. And I think that we have a nice interior. If you move LVN inside and out, you have a two-way go there. I think that's helpful. And then, again, if we look at NASCAR packages and try to go a little light and fast, I would be completely fine with that. It's just our defense, if our heavy defense can get us into those 2nd, 3rd, and long so that we can get to that rush. Because it's not like we can start just rushing the passer with all speed.
Yeah. Up next, we got Warren Brinson, 6th-round pick. Brinson's 40-yard dash and 10-yard split times were fractionally slower than any defensive tackle Gookins has drafted, trailing Carl Brooks by a mere hundredths of a second. These differences are negligible, indicating Brinson fits squarely within Green Bay's athletic expectations for the position. So even though he came up a little bit short, you're kind of splitting hairs at that point, right? So Warren Brinson, another guy, man, I kind of feel. You guys tell me what you think about this, Tim. I'm a little more excited about Nazir Stackhouse, who was an undrafted free agent, than I am Warren Brinson. However, it's obvious Goody had a much higher grade on Warren Brinson than he did Stackhouse, right?
In Goot we trust, right? Because Nas Stackhouse was who I thought we were going to pull the trigger on in the later rounds, personally. And he was a guy that I wanted. Brinson, not as high on my radar, like you had said. So we ended up with them both. I don't care if one's a UDFA. These guys are Packers, and it's awesome. There's the Georgia pipeline is real with this team. It goes without saying at this point, right? And we like our Bulldogs here in Green Bay. So I'm excited though, but not Stackhouse. That's going to be a guy to watch at camp too, for sure. Not to take anything away from Warren Brinson, but we need to fill some voids there on that D line, and I think we did a good job picking up some guys from Georgia.
Yeah, I think it's nice because we went after Carl Brooks, Bowling Green. We got Wooden. I don't remember where what school he went to, but you go ahead and say, hey, Brinson, I'm going to get him, draft him. We got a Georgia guy in here. We get a second Georgia guy like Nas. I like Nas. I think he's probably going to make the roster, and Brinson's already almost guaranteed to make the roster just because he was that draft pick. So you bring in 2 Georgia dudes down there in the middle, and then if Wooden's not it anymore, okay. If Carl Brooks isn't it, okay. But at least you've replaced it with a little bit more talent. But I don't think that they're at that point with those 2 guys. So I think that everyone's going to kind of get a shot. And we talked about hockey line last year. This is the hockey line for a defensive line, man. If we can get some of these guys, showing out.
Yeah.
Soder had it in the chat. Kobe Wooden went to Auburn.
Okay, that's it. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Greg Rice says, weren't Aaron Donald and Ray Lewis not typical sizes for their positions? I know Aaron Donald wasn't. And what's crazy is, like, you get these guys that every 3 or 4 years that are extremely undersized and they end up being Hall of Fame players. Like Aaron Donald, just an absolute madman, which, by the way, since Elton Jenkins has been kind of one of the topics of conversation here lately, and they're most likely going to try to rework that deal a little bit for him. I remember when he dominated Aaron Donald. He had Aaron Donald frustrated, and he manhandled him that game. I'll never forget that. I remember seeing a meme that was created on Twitter that just broke me up. It was literally Elton Jenkins' face photoshopped on a dad sitting there, and his little son was sitting on his knee, and they put Aaron Donald's.
I remember that. That was hilarious.
Like, we got to ride this one out, boys. This probably ain't going to happen again. But he kicked Aaron Donald's ass the entire day.
That was probably like one of like 2 or 3 times in Aaron Donald's career that he didn't get to do what he wanted to do out there on that football field. He just had no answers for Big E.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And what was I going to say there? Oh, another one too. You guys remember James Harrison for the Pittsburgh Steelers, right?
Yeah.
I think he may have been undrafted. That was a guy that did not have edge defender, outside linebacker in a 34 defense, top measurables, and he dominated as well. Absolutely dominated. So, all right, moving along, we got Micah Robinson, cornerback out of Tulane, with the 7th round pick at 183 pounds. Robinson is the lightest cornerback Green Bay has drafted since at least 2011, edging out Shamar Jean-Charles by a pound. Gutekunst has acknowledged Jean-Charles as an outlier, and Robinson's selection reinforces that weight is a flexible parameter when other traits like coverage skills stand out. So obviously a much smaller cornerback than Goody typically likes here in Micah Robinson. This is another dude too, kind of like Nazir Stackhouse. I'm excited to hear about camp updates from him. I really am.
Yeah.
So,
I feel like this is this year's Kalen King. We were kind of excited about Kalen King last year, late in the draft, grabbing a corner. And I look right here at Micah Robinson. It's another young player. Yeah, he's a little undersized, but if he's a baller, he's going to fit in. So it'll be really fun to watch him out there working.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it, honestly. Being able to come in Fordham, right? I think you went from.
Yeah, I think, or was it Furman?
Furman to Tulane. Stepping up in competition and being able to still produce. I love that. They like his hands, his instincts. You heard Half talking about him. Production for DBs in college is key. If you can't get around the ball, then I think that's an issue. So how are they going to be able to teach you how to be around the ball? It's just some dudes just have a knack for it. You're just always around it, and that's what we can maybe get out of them.
Yeah, who was that in the chat that was talking about the helmet there, Tim? Was that?
Oh, that was Soder.
Yeah.
Tulane has some butt ugly helmets.
Man, who the hell designed that?
Could be a crackhead.
All right, moving along here. Up next, you got John Williams, offensive lineman out of Cincinnati. All right, 7th round pick. Had Belton not been drafted a day earlier, Williams, 1 pound heavier than Sean Ryan and Derek Sherrod, would have been the heaviest offensive lineman in the Gutekunst-Thompson era. His selection reinforces Green Bay's openness to bigger linemen, provided they meet athletic thresholds. So not only did they take a 2nd round pick that's way heavier than they normally take, they also went in the 7th round and got John Williams here out of Cincinnati. So it's obvious that I think I heard can't remember who I heard talking about this. I wish I could give credit to the right person, but they were talking. It might have been Tauscher talking about this on their show, but he said I think Goody kind of seen Philadelphia playing bully ball in that playoff game and was like, "Hey, let's start to build our lineup a little bit so we can kind of handle this a little bit more." Which, by the way, somebody had mentioned it earlier in the show, and I meant to mark it and I missed it. We got them on Monday Night Football, November 10th at Lambeau Field, I believe it is. So
yeah, Bates mentioned that.
Yeah,
on
that's going to be absolutely
Marine Corps' birthday. What a treat.
Yeah,
I know Bates will be at that game for sure.
You don't think Bates will be sauced up, do you?
Maybe a little.
No, not at
Come
all.
on, you got to have one or two daddy sodas for the core, man.
Oh, he's having a couple daddies. We might have to send Bates a super chat for that one.
That reminds me too. When I asked Bates if he was going to be at the draft, he said, "I'm not going to make it to the draft because me and some Philly buddies are going to be going to the Philly Packer game at Lambeau this year." So I bet he is jacked over that. So we need to get a live
post game. Send him a GoPro or something. Just scrap it.
Post game show. I want a drunken FaceTime from United Bates live.
That would be perfect.
Yeah, love it. All right. So what we learned about Green Bay's draft approach, the 2025 draft reveals a Packers front office that's both disciplined and adaptable. While they deviated from their norms in 7 of 8 picks, these exceptions were calculated, often tied to elite speed with Golden, athleticism with Belton, or positional versatility with Williams and Oliver. The refusal to draft players who skip the 40-yard dash underscores their commitment to measurable data, even in a testing-light year. Meanwhile, picks like Belton and Williams suggest Green Bay is less rigid about weight than previously thought, prioritizing movement and fit over strict size caps. Gutekunst's track record shows a knack for balancing tradition with flexibility. As he joked post-draft, his scouting days were marked by a bias towards bigger players, a tendency that seems to persist. For fans and analysts, the 2025 draft is a reminder that while the Packers' blueprint is well-defined, it's not inflexible. They'll bend the rules, but only for players who check enough of their core boxes there. That's right. Absolutely. So is there anything else you guys want to hit on there before we hit the super chat and wrap this section up here, man?
Real quick on John Williams, I think it might be the first time in a while that we drafted a tackle and he might actually play tackle. I don't know if they're going to kick him to guard on this O-line, but I guess I'll wait to be proven wrong. But I got a feeling that he might compete for that backup spot on the left side, possibly.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a great point. Hey, Travis Glover, you got a little competition coming your way, bub.
Let's go. You're ready to go.
You think he's going to handle it, Emilio? He's
absolutely. Right. Come on now.
All right. Our Aaron Rodgers, not the Aaron Rodgers with the super chat. Thank you, buddy. Says, evening, fellas. Question when it comes to camp. Are you guys team offense or team defense when winning reps? With battles at O-line and D-line needing to improve pass rush, I'm curious what y'all think. I'll tell you my experience there, and I want to get Tim's take because he's usually boots on the ground there at most of the training camp practices. Whoever won the day before, I want them to get their ass kicked the next day, Tim. That's what I need. That's right. I want it to be balanced to where it's like, okay, both sides are competing because it seems like here recently, you correct me if I'm wrong, it's always one-sided here lately, right? And, many people were like, well, they were talking about how great this defense is supposed to be in camp, and they ended up sucking. No, they didn't suck. It was the strength of our team. What are you talking about, right? So what do you think? How would you answer that, Tim?
Yeah, the answer is yes. You want a competitive, hyper intense camp with it's like Emilio always talks about, iron sharpens iron. So if your defense is winning on Wednesday, you want to see your offense win on Thursday. You want to see the guys taking turns doing push-ups after practice or whatever they're going to do this year for the loser in the matchups or whatever. But you guys know I'm a big defensive guy, so I'm always out there rooting for my defense. A lot of that comes from the fact that it makes our offense better. If these defenders are making it tough on Jordan and Malik and our guys in the QB room, if they're making it hard on these receivers, that's a good sign. So I think you would like to see consistency. You'd like to see a back and forth kind of 50-50 split in an ideal world. But I always lean a little bit towards the defense. That's just me personally.
Yeah. I think so, Tim. I can't wait to see it. Honestly, I think that we get a lot of the young guys out there. I know the team's still a little young, but we've added some age to it. I just really can't wait. Let's get them on the bikes, get them down the road, and get them out there because Seeing Jordan Love throw it to Golden and Savion and seeing the new D-line out there, it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, definitely. All right, guys, that's going to do it for hour 1. For those of you listening on the pod, we will see you on the other side for hour 2. We appreciate y'all.
For those of you listening on the pod,
welcome into hour 2. And again, Aaron, thank you for the super chat, buddy. Soder with the super chat. Appreciate you, pal. He says the cornerbacks, if there is no Ja, will really need pass rush. Suspect that they will, looking at last cut cornerbacks, if King do not ball out, King and someone else, I believe it says, do not ball out in the preseason. Yeah, I'm a little bit – I look at it a little different, Soder. I look at this cornerback room that, yeah, we lost 3 corners, but your starting corners are coming back. Jair missed, almost damn near 70% of the snaps last year, right? So you got Carrington Valentine coming back. You added Nate Hobbs. You got Keyshawn coming back as well, and you played Javon Bullard in the slot. So I hope Ja's here. Don't get me wrong. I think the team is much better with him on it if he plays 3 games, right? But you kind of look at what they did last year. I mean, we talked about it. They were top 5 in EPA per drop back. Mm-hmm. So, and that was with supposedly the pass rush being bad, even though they finished 8th in sacks. And you guys know where I stand on that. I don't think it was near as bad as people had kind of reported. I understand what you're saying, though. Like, it doesn't mean you can't add to the room if somebody gets cut, right? And you can pick up somebody off the wire there a little bit for sure. So appreciate the super chat there, Soder. You were the man. But appreciate it. We had Ronald Peterman in here earlier. Says, why are you such a horrible journalist?
Journalist.
Ronald Bub, it's the first time I've seen you in here. First of all, I want to say thanks for swinging through. If that's your real profile pic, it's probably past your bedtime, but we appreciate you hanging out with us. And I just want to say we're not journalists, man. We're not. Now, I appreciate the kind words saying that we're horrible journalists, seeing that we're just fans that talk about the Packers. So, find those 2 brain cells, rub them together, and let it bounce around that noggin of yours before you let it come flying out your mouth next time, okay?
Make sure you check out his feed on X, though, too. Those posts from 2021 are great.
Oh, really? We'll have to give that a gander. Look at Tim already did some research.
Oh, boy.
All right, let me write that down real quick.
Yeah,